everyone, I mean, LV, like, who's LV? Like, I should maybe call you by your actual name.
No, LV's fine. I think it works. Okay, let's just do it. Cool.
Okay.
Dr. Jerome, thank you. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm quite excited to have this discussion with you today.
Always a pleasure.
So we've had quite a journey together, and I think from my side, I really wanted to kind of share your story with the audience that we work with, both in the startup ecosystem as well as within the enterprise businesses that we engage with. So yeah, I think, we're excited to hear what you have to say. And again, thank you for your time.
I was just reading a quote the other day, and it says that every journey starts with a step. And I think, was it Confucius or Sun Tzu? I have no idea. But it's a quote that has kind of stuck in my head for the longest time. Every journey begins with a step. And if you're an entrepreneur or a startup system or a startup listening to this, it's so important that a journey is ahead of you. And often it's not really the destination, but really about the learnings that we have in that journey that we go towards the destination. So here's my story. The story of a Indian boy who, at the age of 14 years old, developed his first ever advertisement trying to sell cookies to all his relatives. You see, I've always been interested in branding. I've always wanted to share the message of branding, even at a really young age. And I didn't understand the concept of branding, but I really felt that if I could sell stuff, if I could create stuff and package it, people would pay me more money for it. My cookies were a bestseller, by the way. But that's kind of how my journey started, that passion. Now, I came from a family of non-marketing people, non-branding people. Probably everyone in my family was in a lawyer or an engineer, typical Indian family. And I was the only one that was saying, look, my dad, look, I want to study communications. I want to communicate. I want to talk branding. And my journey, my education has always been into branding all my life. It's about how brands can have conversations, how brands can build powerful messages, differentiation in the marketplace. And my studies and my journey, when I studied in Singapore and Australia, has really been a big impact for me. And that's how I first started.
And that's here in Singapore, right?
Singapore and in Australia, that I studied, yeah.
Okay, amazing. And so you said the cookies were a success.
It was a success.
And who baked the cookies?
No, I didn't. So this is it. I got my grandma to bake it, but she baked it. I sold it. I branded it and I sold it.
No, so that was your first real origin kind of exposure to branding.
Exactly.
And we going back now, but what can you share as key learnings that you took out of that, and what how did you progress from that step forward?
So a big part of my life was really about saying, how can I build brands and create brands? And in my head, I kind of knew how to do it, but that's where education came in. Going to school, learning, understanding, working on projects allowed me to develop and harness that understanding into a structured approach. By the way, I'm a huge believer in growth and learning. As you know, LV, I always share the story about, if you go on YouTube, there's a story about how I got my doctorate, my journey to getting my doctorate. I believe that learning happens at any point of time in our life. Even if you're 80 years old, you can still be learning and still can be growing. So for me, I was obsessed with learning. I wanted to learn as much as I can. And even after I completed school, armed with a master's degree, I still wanted to learn more. And this is what I did. I traveled the world looking for the best experts in the world in the space of marketing, branding, and strategy, paid them really good money to sit in their programs and learn from them. Just so that I will be able to say that I got the best knowledge, the best education possible in growing my expertise. And that's the lesson, right? The lesson is you should never be comfortable. You should always be uncomfortable, because comfort never produces greatness. And I'm obsessed with learning. And I'll give you something else I did. When I told myself that this was a space that I wanted to be in, I remember going on Amazon and buying every book that was written in my space. Every book. I spent a lot of money. And again, I just got out of school. I didn't have a lot of money on my hand. So I borrowed this money. I borrowed money to buy books. I borrowed money to pay experts to attend their programs to make sure that I got the knowledge. And this was while working as a full-time brand consultant as well. So I was learning on the job, but I wasn't happy with just learning on the job. I wanted to know that what I had was the best in class, that my growth towards being the best brand guy in the world, right? That trajectory comes from really investing time and hours into developing thought leadership and knowledge.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that definitely resonates with me. And if you look at the world we live in, that continuous learning and development at a personal level, within your job, if we look at the rate of technology change and how that's, shifting the landscape for companies and individuals on how to engage with this new digital age. And I want to loop back to that. But before I do so, I mean, you started off with your Genesis story, and I love the fact that you have continuously absorbed and developed yourself, learned from the best of the best. And as it currently stands, you now ranked number 2 globally.
In 2022.
In 2022.
2022, I was ranked number 2 in 2020. So it changes every year.
Yeah.
But my highest ranking is number 2 in the world. And I'm very proud of the ranking. And there's a whole story behind that. But I mean, I'm the only Asian to make that list. And for me, that's a huge brownie point for Asians all around the world.
Yeah, congratulations. I think that is a massive achievement. And maybe you can just share what does your current company look like, and what is what do you do?
Right. So I own 2 businesses. The first business is a brand consulting business. For me, it's important because I think, if as a professional that goes in and consults and works with organizations, I need to practice what I preach. So the consulting provides that practice what I preach, where I go in and I work with organizations all around the world to develop their brand. The other business is my speaking, coaching, facilitation programs that I run. And that's a training business. And I go in, I do keynotes, I do workshops, I do boot camps, I do coaching, helping organizations grow and transform their brand from a training-based approach. They both go hand in hand because I truly believe that today in the marketplace, there are trainers who have read a book but have no practical experience in implementation. And that's where I want to be different. I want to be able to tell organizations, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm still doing it. And so when I go in and I train and I speak, it comes from this body of implementation, practical insights. We have a structured approach to learning and development.
Nice. So let's break it up into 2 parts then. I think let's hone in on the business itself and just want to explore that a bit more. So what is the compelling pain points and challenges that businesses face in today's world around branding?
There are several key challenges. I mean, we did a research in 2020 looking, and of course, when we did the research, we had no idea that COVID was going to happen.
Yeah, sure.
We commissioned the research and we put it out there, and the insights that we got were just whoa, right? So let me just point out three insights that we saw and we noticed, especially in this VUCA environment. Number one is the rise of competition and clutter. And that's huge, right? So let's start first with clutter. I mean, think about it, right? You wake up every day and you're bombarded with messages. From the minute your alarm clock goes off, right? You take your phone, messages. Switch on the TV, messages. You get in your car, you drive to work, messages all around you, from the radio to the billboards. You reach work and you're bombarded with emails and messages. Typically, data has shown this, right? One average person gets between 4,000 to 10,000 messages on a daily basis.
Wow.
That's clutter. And here's the other stat. From the 4,000 to 10,000 messages, we probably remember less than 100.
Okay, so massive drop off.
Yeah, and if you have my memory, maybe 20. But that's an issue, which means as a brand, putting a message out there in the world, if you are not differentiated, if you're not louder than all the noise and the clutter, if you are not special, you will probably be ignored. Okay. So that's a problem. And then you got competition, right? Because in that same context, you have other brands who are better, bigger, louder, Now, if you're in startup business, I mean, think about it, right? You are up against Goliaths, and you have Goliaths that have got more budgets than you, shouting louder than you. So what are brands going to do? So here is, in this era of VUCA, that's a huge challenge. That's what I face on a daily basis. That's challenge number one, competition and clutter.
Interesting.
You ready for challenge number two?
Yes, bring it.
Culture. Culture has taken a back seat. I think someone has said this. I think was it Peter Drucker? I can't remember now. But it always says, right, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's this famous quote. I need to look up who said it, but I always hear that. But unfortunately, it's just a quote because no one really practices it. I've gone into organizations where they spend a lot of time building this image. Sometimes I like to show this picture in my programs, and it's a picture of a cat, a little kitten looking in the mirror, and it's a picture of a lion. And I show this as what brands do. They paint a picture that they're a lion to the world, but inside the organization, it's something else. And that's where I believe is a huge fundamental mistake. The face that you show to the world has to be the same face that you show to your internal stakeholders. Culture has taken a back seat. And I've seen that over and over again. I mean, in my research, in my doctorate, data has pointed very clearly that employees are not engaged by the brand. They don't know what the brand means. They don't know how to deliver the brand. They're like, what culture? It's a mess. Everyone's doing different things. The leaders don't follow what the brand represents. Yes, that's a huge problem. And if you are going to survive VUCA, you got to have alignment. You gotta practice what you preach inside and outside. You got to get your people on board your brand, because if you don't get them on board your brand, you are going to suffer in VUCA.
I'd like to just explore that a bit more, and I think I've experienced some interesting stories in my own right, both in my own business and I've always been a bit of a perfectionist with how we are perceived by the outside world. When I was running a small system integration business and driving for perfection and work ethic and living the brand, right? And then I've also seen, working for a startup that we scaled across the globe, the challenges that we faced with culture. And what was interesting is we started, when I joined the specific business, I think I was like coming in at employee number 35 or something. And this business very quickly landed one or two successful IoT projects, and on the back of that received an investment from an international corporation that then was taking the brand and expanding it through its global network. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to evangelize the brand through these different regions and go activate these regional teams. So what I saw during this process was two things. One, I believed the brand. I lived and breathed the brand, and I really believed. Because
you're employee number 35.
Yeah. So I was really super passionate, and it would always come through my demos and how I would speak about IoT holistically, but then also specifically this brand, which I really believed in, and more importantly, the leadership. I really had a lot of love for the leadership. I thought they were really stellar individuals. But what was interesting, just looping back to culture, was the situation that played out, that when we received this massive tranche of investment to expand globally, we went through this situation where we went from 32 employees to 100 employees, from 100 to 350 in a very short space of time. And there was a few things that happened with that. One is we very quickly realized our onboarding program wasn't catering for that type of rapid growth, which resulted in a landing for new employees into the business that only came right later on, when were closer to the 300 employee mark. Yeah. So that resulted in a lot of people coming into the business in a very unstructured fashion. And the consequence of that was I believe, and this is my personal opinion, is we had what made us famous as a business. When we grew so rapidly and we had all of these employees coming into the business, we had this dilution of culture. And what that resulted in was this massive challenge on how do we make sure that when we're engaging on such a broad scale, that what made us famous would come through in the brand. So that was an interesting learning, and I'm sure you've seen other scenarios like that.
Oh, multiple times, multiple. And what you share is not uncommon, right? You have organizations, and maybe, when you first start, because you're employee number 35, right? You created a culture. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't have a structured approach to culture. It was just there.
Yeah, it was palpable. It was coming from the leadership, right? And their work ethic. And
the culture that resonates. And in fact, in my data, the leaders drive culture, right? So it's their culture. Now, the mistake that they made was this: they did not define that culture. They didn't package it. They didn't build a structured approach to rolling it out and aligning people when they brought in. So the initial stage, they didn't have to, because everyone who joined came in saying, hey, I love being part of this. I love you as a leader. I love your ethic. But the problem was that didn't travel. It didn't travel because there was no structured process around it. And when the business expanded, the focus was always on business performance, which is the lion. I want to show the face of the lion. But in reality, it didn't match up inside. Now, if the business had a structured approach to culture, if they said, listen, we love the ethics, the work ethics of leaders, we love the founder's message, let's build a structured culture, and then take that and onboard everyone that comes in so that they understand what this means. That means we hire people that fit in the culture. We continuously share the message of what it means to be part of this organization. We have training programs to drive this message. So if they had continuously done that, this problem wouldn't have happened.
And I think you've hit you bang on the money, because that's actually what we ended up doing. So we set up a training and enablement division, and I became part of that division that drove that with a team. And very quickly we did a few things. One, we organized a consulting session with Justin Cohen, actually, funnily enough. And what we got was a session where we got all the leadership to sit down on a call, and at that time it was during COVID, and to explain, how do they perceive the brand? How do they pitch the brand to the market? And the intent of the workshop was to come out with metaphors and one-liners that would become the key descriptors of what it is. So manage your business through a single pane of glass. Okay, turning your data, turning your data into gold.
Great.
The very simple taglines that would help the customer understand what we do. Number one. Yeah. Number two, to take all of that and boil it down into a brand identity that we could then train all the new employees on as module 1 on their training and enablement.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And then from there, depending on their discipline, have a pre-sales, sales specialist, solution architect, a training path that we would then send them on.
Which is very role specific.
Exactly.
Right? So you have a broad base. We call it Live the Brand, which we have in our own process, which is for everybody. And then we have role specific, right? So customer facing employees, we have a branded customer experience program. If it's sales, we have a sell the brand program. And that's exactly what you just said. You have a big picture program, but you also have role specific, because every role is going to have different challenges and different needs, and you cater to those needs. Spot on.
Yeah. So that was maybe a little bit too little too late, but ultimately I'm glad that we put it in place, and I think it started fixing the problem. Another interesting point I would like to get your thoughts on is, because this startup became part of a bigger brand, okay, which was a global telco, we had to then enable those regional telco teams to live the brand.
Yeah.
So not direct employees, indirect, somehow get across to them our brand ethos and way and methodologies that made us famous, and transpose it onto them so that they could actually take IoT and make IoT successful in the market. So
what you're talking about is a mergers and acquisition where I've done this quite a few times. One of our big clients was a global tech player, and they acquired a smaller business. This was a business in India. And we were called in because they said, hey, the business in India is a direct opposite of culture of what we have. Can you go in and help? And it was really a long drawn intervention to be able to mold. And of course, there's going to be a lot of resistance to change. That is normal in any mergers and acquisitions, but it's a must because if it was left unattended, what will happen is there's going to be disgruntled employees who go, why are you changing? Why do I need to follow you? And you don't want that to happen. Now, of course, in the path of change, in any change management, there will always be people that goes, I don't want to change. I don't want to change. And I have CEOs that come up to me and say, what should we do? Right? We have a group of people that don't want to change. And I go, what do you think you should do? And they have the answer. And the answer is find people that fits the culture. Get the right fit. Because if we don't get the right fit in the long run, you will struggle as a business. If people don't want to change, you will struggle because then you have employees that go, I've changed, but look at the leaders. They are not. They're not walking their talk. They're not living the brand. Why should I do that?
Yeah.
And back to square one.
And we saw that, right? I think there was a few things. So one is trying to maintain our own brand identity with this big corporate that had come in and was sending a lot of their people into this business, helping this big corporate entity across all their regionals, and still trying to maintain our own identity. It was extremely challenging. I think, what recommendation would you give to any startup that's going through that type of acceleration to protect their brand? And I want to loop back to your hiring process as a separate discussion point, but just off the cuff, I mean, how do you maintain that independence or brand identity?
So the first thing is this, right? I mean, I alluded to it a little while earlier. Prevention is better than cure. If you're a startup business, map it out. Map out what culture looks like to you. Map out how brand fits in that culture. Now, again, I use the word brand and culture. And people go, but isn't it two different things? And I go, it's not. It should be the same thing. That's why I use the word branded culture in my book. It should be the same thing. So if your brand is talking about transparency, empowerment, creativity, it should be reflected in your culture, in the language, in behaviors. It needs to be translated and reflected. So start by having a systematic process where you, as you said, create identity, create systems, create behavioral guidelines. And once you have that, look at how that fits in the hiring process. Look at how that fits in leadership conversations or in leadership meetings. Look at how that fits in the way the managers look at performance with the people that are under them. So these are things that need to be integrated into an organization right off the bat. If you do that well enough, then you won't have to find a cure because you have this. Now, cultures evolve. So maybe once they have a system in place and as they grow and as they build, it could evolve. It could evolve because as you grow bigger, it could evolve. But then you evolve from a foundational culture that's already been structured, that's already been put into place.
Got you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I recently, I have the benefit of working with startups now in the ecosystem. And one of the things I'm doing when we help them with their go-to-market strategies, I pull this right up front, set up the training and enablement division, establish your brand culture, and your brand identity. And then from there, make sure any new person that comes on board goes through this learning process before they're even allowed to touch the market to make sure that, they represent you correctly.
And if you have that off the bat, I think that's really very powerful. There's a story that I read online and the brand doesn't come to mind, but it's very interesting, right? Is part of the hiring process. They had a few things that they do. Number one is the team members interview. So you have, of course, when they come in, you may have a HR interview, but the team members interview. So the team members get to see if this person fits the culture. Number one. Number two, the person is given a sum of money to resign.
The person coming in?
The person is given a sum of money. Here's a sum of money. If you feel like this is not part of your DNA and the culture, you don't think that you can fit into this organization, we will pay you to resign.
Oh, really? I've never heard of that. That's so interesting.
And it was like, whoa. So this is interesting, right? So you join this company. Now you got a lump sum of money here, which tells the company very clearly, if this person takes the money,
something's off,
right? And they go, then they made a mistake. And I thought that was a very interesting dimension to what they've done to make sure that the culture, the person that they hire fits into the culture. Now, when I asked them how often do people take the money, They said 1 in 100.
Which means their culture is strong.
Exactly.
And they've hired the right person to fit into their culture.
Exactly. And this is something that I read online, and this comes from the reading that I read. But I thought it was really very powerful. Now, when we go in and consult, we find ways to check if the person's a fit. So there are tools that you can use, for example, measurement tools that you can use. And we also have measurement tools that we use throughout the process, which says how engaged is the employee, how much do they believe in the culture? Are they advocating the culture? Are they loyal to the culture? And we use these measurement tools to get a sense. But these are things that you could do. Because, I like what this company did with that, with the money and with the team members hiring. Think about it, right? If you have an organization, how do you ensure you get the right fit of people? Yep.
And going back to that experience I had, it felt like at some point there was just hiring for the sake of hiring. It felt like there was a big disconnect between who we were hiring, why we were hiring them. This urgency to flood the ranks with resources so we could meet this global rollout plan.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we would find people that had landed in the business that were floating. They didn't know what they were doing or didn't have a proper reporting line. I think we discovered someone in the business that was a developer that hadn't even done any development that was earning a massive package. So they had to clean
How
that
did
up.
he get in?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think when you go from like 50 to 100, 100 to 300, it's quite a growth spurt. And I think I read something recently that resonated quite a bit with me. It was one of the angel investors in our network. And he was making a comment that as a founder of a business, you can never fully divorce yourself from the hiring process. If someone doesn't fit in, that is your mistake, because either you didn't vet them properly or you didn't put the right structures in place to make sure you hire the right person. And I think, again, you've mentioned a few things which sound like the obvious, but getting this multi-tiered process to see, is this the right person? People within the business vouching for a recommendation. I see a lot of that. So recommending people that you think would be good for the company, testing them with the team. What else would be some key takeaways?
Role play scenarios. So one of the things that we do as part of the process is role play scenarios. Give them a scenario and say, what would you do in this scenario? And see how they react, right? So that's one. There are specific behavioral tools, for example, which I know many organizations have, which tests. But you see, I'm not a big fan of behavioral tools at the start, because a lot of them is people know how to answer it. They know how to cheat the process, right? But that's why I like the role plays. Put them in a scenario, give them a scenario, and see how they behave in that scenario.
I like that. That resonates.
So you set the scenario. Say, hey, we're going to meet a client, have an engagement. And get, for example, in one of the things that we implemented, we created 3 clients scenarios. A very tough scenario where the client was saying a few things and triggering the person and seeing how they react in such a situation. And we have trained observers to look at how well they connect and how well they relate and how well they. So these are things you could do. The role plays are one of them.
And that role play would be with another person acting as the customer?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's an example. Now, if you don't have a customer facing role, it could be an internal colleague where you put all these role plays and they try this out. So that could be one. The other thing is when you hire, when you tick the box, you ask questions that determine how this person would deliver on the values of the brand values of the organization. So, for example, let's talk about innovation. Let's say if innovation is a big part of what you are looking for in a person, then you need to have strategic questions that help you get a sense of how this person would deal with innovation.
Yeah, I think we've specifically done things like that with solution architects or people that we're trying to bring in to give them a practical. So if they got to a certain point, give them a practical exercise. How would you integrate a smart farm? And then see what they would come back with. So I think that's quite powerful. And the use of technologies is interesting because I'm working with a lot of different AI solutions that measure body language, body behavior, voice,
Yeah.
the ability to articulate a brand,
Yeah.
to a customer. So you do recommend the use of tools, but how you use them.
Yeah.
Got you.
And I would say, right, I mean, a big part of what we do is we spend some time on the hiring process, but what our strengths are is actually working with who's an organization. That's kind of our strength. So if you got 1,000 employees, that's what we want to focus on.
Mm.
How do we focus on not who's coming in, right, but really who you have?
Mm.
That's primarily our consulting approach. Is really saying, okay, we got 1,000 employees. How do we get systems in place, structures in place, and how do we influence? So it's internal marketing. How do we market to 1,000 people so that we increase advocacy, loyalty, motivation, engagement? So that's what we focus on. That's a big part of our consulting process.
Yeah, I think that's important. And, something else that I've seen going through COVID, and I think it has a lot to do with the campaign that we're running, which is navigating global crisis.
It is,
I'm quite excited about working on that.
And it's getting worse, right? I mean, you think about what VUCA has done. I just got back from 1 month of travel, running programs all around the world. And I remember in every workshop that we sat down and did our programs and I did this in 4 different countries. Everyone said the same thing. I can't believe they're making me come back to work. Everyone said that, right? And it tells me a couple of things, right? Number one, it tells me that the communication behind coming to work has not been articulated, for example. It tells me that people have now moved into different states. And it's the role of the culture to bring them to the state where fits where the organization is moving towards. And I see that as a challenge because there's a lot of disgruntled employees in all the programs that I was doing. And a big part of what I had to do was to say, okay, listen, everyone, the world is kind of moving back to, it had a jump start, but it's moving back. And you need to know, but I think that's where there was a lack, in communication organizations. So for me, in this VUCA world, there will be plenty such instances where you see volatility, you see uncertainty, and all this is going to be happening. The best brands in the world are prepared. They're prepared with a plan. They're prepared on how to deal with that. Now, I started off by sharing you 2 challenges, right? Competition and clutter, and culture taking a back seat. For me, these are 2 crucial areas. If we don't focus on dealing with these issues and preventing these issues, brands are going to struggle even more.
Yeah, I think, again, mental resilience, seeing this bombardment of different crises, both within an organization, within the leadership of an organization, the external factors. We look at, what COVID, the impact COVID had on people mentally, initially just as a pandemic, then the work from home, then the hybrid, now they come back to work. And it feels like there's a perfect storm of pressure points. I mean, we've got the financial crisis that's rolling out across the US at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
and Switzerland.
And Switzerland. I mean, it's a global issue, right? I mean, a lot of what we want to focus on, you talk about culture, but I think a lot of what we see is the pressure that the C-suite has on how to deal with all of these different changes. Then you've got the employees that feel like inflation's eroding them. There's mass layoffs happening. How do they deal with their mental state when, 11,000 employees disappear from their organization? Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic. And, I think what I'm excited about with the Navigating Global Crisis campaign that we're doing with you is the ability to go in and start helping thought leadership, helping with the one-on-one or the group sessions with the technologies that can come in at the back of that to help them to be able to deal with these different challenges.
Yeah. And I truly believe, right? I mean, learning and development's a big part of that. It's key because it's one thing where they read an email written by a CEO saying, hey, everyone, time to get back to the office because it's important, right? Versus going through a structured training program, which builds, as you said, mental resilience and toughness, which gives them an approach on how to effectively deal with each other and with their customers, which also gives leaders the way to lead effectively in the best possible way, which also helps brands reach customers who are also affected, just as affected as the internal stakeholders. So I think this is a great campaign. I truly believe it. This is an interesting time in the world. Every time you pick up the newspaper, all you are reading is pain, crisis, volatility, everything. You're reading all that. I wish there was a day I could pick up the newspapers and read happy things.
Maybe we should create one of those papers.
Exactly, right? The happy paper. And brands need to be ready. That's my message. You got to be ready. You got to be putting things into place. You cannot wait till it happens. Prevention is better than cure. Now, it doesn't mean if you are already facing these issues, you cannot speak to me or speak to you, right? We can have those conversations, but you got to put these structures into place.
Yeah, no, sure. I want to loop back to the first problem statement just quickly. So you've got a lot of new brands entering the market with new technologies. You're competing with these behemoths that have these bottomless budgets for marketing. I want to dive into some quick tips or focus points, and I'm thinking specifically through the lens of digital growth hacking solutions.
Okay.
And the ability to have a startup, for example, compete with a laser focus from a branding perspective.
Sure.
What would you recommend?
Can I do my story?
Please.
So growing up, right, my dad used to tell me the story of David and Goliath. For those who don't know the story of David and Goliath, it's a biblical story. It's a story about a giant warrior, strong, big, years of experience. And you had the story of David, a shepherd with no weapons, but just a sling. And it tells a story of how David defeated this giant, Goliath, by using the sling and striking a blow at a stone that knocked him out. Now, it's a powerful story because it relates back to brands. Going back to what you just said, you have these giants of the industry, this big technology firms. In fact, across industries, you have giant players, but you can be David. Now, what was David's strategy in this entire process? David was nimble. He didn't fight the same battle. So when he went on and took on Goliath, if he had gone head to head with Goliath, he would have lost. But what did he do? He used the terrain. He was fast. He was nimble. He was quick. He was innovative because he realized that if I go hand to hand, I'm going to lose. Let me use a sling and I keep my distance. Now I'm relating that story back to your question. Brands need to find ways to fight competition by being nimble because they have that advantage. They can move faster, quicker with less red tape. They need to have focus, knowing that they can't do everything. They can't fight hand to hand, but they could do something else. And once they find what they can do to win, focusing on it.
And is that focus about understanding your product market fit, about understanding who your target customer is and making sure your channel to that person is clearly defined? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So a big part of it, bring it back, right? David's need to be able to say, okay, look, I know the terrain and the terrain is, what is my channel, right? Who's my customer? How does my product fit in the needs of the customer? And how do I go after this customer using methods which I can move a lot faster?
And breaking through that noise that you're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part. I mean, noise is, that's one, we just talked about competition, but then you have noise. And noise means you have to be extremely creative. You have to be really clever. And in my program, I talk about how brand experiences are going to change that. So if you are able to go in and create a unique experience that makes customers go, whoa, I want to work with this company. Now, I talk about experiences through 4 lenses. Number 1, I talk about it from a service perspective, the service experience. So great customer service. For example, you are dependable, you are efficient, you are there for the customer. Number 2, the touch point experiences. Every touch point that you encounter, where the website, it's easy to use, it's easy to navigate, the user experience is great. You talk about the product experience, the products that you sell are of the highest standards and the highest level. And then you talk about the campaign experience, your marketing campaigns, which are creative, unique, that stand out. If you are able to build such experiences, you stand a higher chance of differentiating yourself in this cluttered competition.
And you're, as a new startup that hasn't got a perfect product, I suppose it's about testing the market and
yes.
then finding that fit and then getting that customer endorsement of the product or service, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically about building trust and credibility. Now, if you have a product that's not tested, I mean, here's the problem, right? I mean, I remember many years back, a startup came up to me and they said, "Can you help us build our brand?" And I was really excited, right? Because they had great ideas. And when I checked out the product, it was bad. It was really a bad product. And I said, "Are you happy with this?" And he said, "Yes, we are." Yes, we are. And I told them this, and I think they were pretty hurt when I said that to them. I said, "Look, I can do all the branding in the world. And you're probably going to get a lot of orders, but your customers are never coming back."
So it's going to be a once-off experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you got to get the product right.
What was the product, out of interest?
I'm gonna not. It was a milk product.
Okay.
I'm not going to mention the company's name, but they sold a formula, an infant formula milk product, and it tasted bad.
Got you.
It tasted bad, and I think they were compromising on the quality of the product.
Got you.
Vis-a-vis competition, and they thought that they had a great product, but I mean, all the research that was done and when worked in said that it wasn't a great product.
And I've seen the converse of that as well.
Yeah.
Where I've got a lot of startups that I work with that have an amazing product. They don't know how to market it.
That's a waste.
Yeah. So, and to be specific, I think one of the company I referenced earlier, one of the things they did phenomenally well early on was develop IP and understand what that IP is, and then wrap it with beautiful marketing and a strong PR campaign that was linked to it, which created this hype around the product. Now, I've seen a lot of startups that I work with that have a better product, but they can't get that market traction.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do about creating that pull factor towards it.
Exactly, right? I mean, it's about differentiating yourself in the marketplace. That's key. And differentiation that will come from the different experiences that you put out, right? The product experience, the touchpoint experience, the campaign experience, the service experience. These are things you can differentiate on. I see it multiple times. I mean, I've gone in. I remember there was a client, a startup business that went in, and they had a great product. And the guy didn't want to spend 1 cent on marketing. We sat down, I looked at him and I said, you have a world-class product. And he goes, if it's a world-class product, people will come to me. The company closed down a year later.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanted to say, I told you so, right? But I felt bad because he had put in a lot of his money in the innovation behind the product. He just didn't believe in marketing and branding.
And there are some brands that get that right, though.
Yeah. There are. I mean, of course, there are brands who say, listen, I'm going to cut the product, but without brand and marketing, it's nothing. I mean, if you think about it, right? If you look at the marketplace, I mean, I always talk about Philips. I think Philips, for example, as a brand, is a great innovation. But the reason why back then, I'm not sure now, right? But back then, when I was looking at Philips, they were not a market leader because other brands are stronger at the brand, stronger at branding, and stronger at marketing. But Philips a great innovation. So this is the challenge, right? If you focus only on innovation and you forget brand and marketing, you're going to struggle. You can come up with a great product, but without this subset, without this marketing, without branding,
no one knows that the product.
Exactly.
How do brands that get that right make that work? Is it the product that's just so powerful that it becomes word of mouth? I think it's Tesla, or is it there's one or two brands that don't do actual marketing. Are you aware of that?
No, because I mean, look at Tesla. I mean, the amount of branding that they have in the marketplace is phenomenal. So let me just maybe get a perspective, right? So I used to work branding and marketing. For me, branding drives marketing. Okay. But it starts with branding first. So maybe if you don't do marketing, but you have branding in place, you tick a box already.
Okay.
Right? You tick a box. So in this case, I think Tesla has done an amazing job with branding. Now, I'm not aware of their marketing campaign to that, but I know that, just look at the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do that well in the stock market if you didn't have a brand in place, because branding is what drives prices up, right? Stock wise. So they have a strong brand. I mean, look at their founder, like Elon Musk. Look at his personal brand. That drives as well. I mean, even with iPhone, I mean, look at the role Steve Jobs played in driving stock prices up. So the role of the personal brand is crucial to the brand of the organization. In fact, by the way, that's my third challenge, right? Personal branding.
Nice. I'm glad we got there. I was about to ask you. Okay, so let's just recap. There was the noise and the clutter. There's
the clutter and the competition.
The clutter competition. Yep. There's culture.
Culture taking a back seat.
And now personal branding.
Personal branding being underutilized. Let me give you a quick story around this, right? I remember when I worked in an organization a few months back. And when I got into the organization, this is what I found out. They had banned all social networks on their server. So employees couldn't access LinkedIn, Facebook. There were certain sites that they couldn't go into. And when I asked why, they go, they should be working. They should be working.
Sounds like a fun company to work for.
Yeah. And for me, I thought that was a wasted opportunity. Because look, 15 years ago, if you had that mindset, or 10 years ago, you had that mindset, it could have made sense. But not anymore. Because the world is all about digital experiences. The world is all about personal brands. Now think about this, right? The organization that I worked with had about 1,000 employees. Imagine if they were given proper training and they were told to put content on social media. They were told to engage with customers in the right way, right? Guidance on the right way. They now have 1,000 sales professionals.
Yeah.
1,000 people selling the brand for this organization.
I want to pause there because I think that's such a powerful train of thought, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen this again for companies that I've worked for. I don't think I've seen any that have trained or empowered the employee on how to leverage social media for the brand. And what I've noticed when I've done a personal post versus a company post, the personal post outdoes the company post by 10x.
Exactly.
From a reach impression perspective, which means that people resonate more with individuals, not necessarily the brand. They switch off when they see the brand post, but if they see an individual with a personalized message, it creates this feel, it creates this pool, it creates people. I have a lot of people reaching out to me on LinkedIn because they want to be part of the Spark program because they see what we're doing within the program. So you saying
there's clear data around this, by the way.
Please,
what you just shared has been proven time and again that an employee gets more reach when they post about the company versus when the company does that. It's proven. It's fact. So that's no more. It's a stat now, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so your recommendation is, because I suppose a lot of companies fear employees misrepresenting the brand
exactly
on social media, but it comes down to training and enablement of the employee on how to do it, and sorting them with a program to do that.
Yeah, so we develop a program that we go in and we work with. So we have two programs, right? So there's the executive program, there's the entrepreneurship program. Well, let's start with the executive program, where we go in and we say, okay, how do we build personal brands in the leadership, in the managers, in the employees, helping them understand guidelines, social media guidelines, helping them understand how to develop content, how to share content, how to be ambassadors for the brand of the organization. And we do that in a systematic approach where at the end of the program that we run, everyone starts putting out content and they're able to now translate the brand in their own authentic voice that comes from them. And it's super powerful because, like I said, if you have 1,000 employees, you now have 1,000 salespeople doing that for you. Then we have a program for entrepreneurs. Because I mentioned it earlier. I talked about Elon Musk. I talked about Steve Jobs. When we work with startup businesses, the role of the founder, the role of the leadership, we want to help them build strong personal brands. Because look at proven success, right? Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. Now I go into organizations where small startups where the founder goes, I don't want a limelight. No, I'm too shy. And you can't. Today, in this day and age, that's why I said personal branding is underutilized. If you are able to leverage this strategically, I use the word strategically. Now, why do I use the word strategically? Someone once came to me, goes, I've got a LinkedIn page, I've got 4,000 followers, and I've got people, I put content and people like it all the time. And I go, has that translated into work? Nope. What is that translated into? So strategically means that I have a system in place. I use the system and I'm able to track and measure results.
Got you.
So if you're an executive, it helps. I can track and measure results for the company and also for you in your personal brand and your growth. And the same thing for entrepreneurs.
So that's if I'm hearing you correctly, it's putting a program in place which you offer to coach executives or frontline staff, salespeople on how to take their personal brand, synthesize it with the company brand, and represent the company correctly.
Sell the brand,
live the brand.
Live
right?
the brand, exactly.
And then over and above that, not just getting impressions for the sake of impressions, but making sure you have the right call to action.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And it needs to be in tension. So if you're an executive, personal branding for executives, it needs to be in tension with your corporate brand. That's very important, because if you go and put out stuff that's not in alignment, going back to culture taking a back seat. Now, yes, so that's the link, right? Throughout every challenge, there is a link. If you put out stuff that's not in alignment, you're in trouble. I'll give you a good example of that. There was a post that was written many years back by I'm not going to say which airline, but it's one of the most famous airlines in the world. And it was a stewardess that shared a post on social media talking about how terrible her customers were, the passengers were. But obviously, she had a tough time dealing with some of the passengers, but she called them out on a social media post. Straight off the bat, what does that reflect? It reflected on the corporate brand, this airline. And it was, people were like, whoa, you work for this brand, you're saying all these things. So while she wrote this post on her own capacity, on a private channel with a private audience, it reflected back to the corporate brand. And I think that was the fear, right? That's why there was a fear at organizations says, I'm going to ban it all, but you can't ban it all. What needed to be done was to educate this person. Now, if she had gone through my program, that wouldn't have happened. She would understand that, okay, if I'm going to put out stuff, I'm going to make sure that it resonates with this. And she would understand the dangers of not doing that. What could be the implications of not doing that, of being off brand, as opposed to being on brand and being an advocate?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting and difficult dynamic. I find in my personal capacity, so, I often I get I keep my finger on the pulse with political events and a lot of the stuff that's happening internationally. And there's a lot of times I've typed out a post on Twitter, for example, where I want to say something, but then I think about how that is potentially perceived because of who I work for. So I might want to have a go at something I don't agree with from a political person that's creating issues globally, but I actually can't. So to manage that, you have to have the consciousness to understand that in your capacity, you do reflect the brand that you work for.
Absolutely.
And then, there's certain posts that you're not going to be able to engage on.
There's one thing that I don't talk about, right? I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about sex. I don't talk about religion. That's my own personal standard.
It's like any good dinner.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean I don't have views on it. Within my close friends, I have conversations around it within my close friends, but I'm very careful about how I project my personal brand. Because I know I can't talk about these 3 things, but there are 100 other things I could talk about. So let me focus on 100 other things that's going to give more value, not just to me, but to my audiences.
Got you.
Yeah.
Something else I want to touch on with a personal brand, and I think it's extremely difficult to manifest, which is authentic posting. What is your viewpoints on that and recommendations to be able to be authentic?
I'm going to be controversial, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial, yeah. So I remember another personal branding expert came up to me and he said to me, you got to be authentic. And I disagreed with him. Okay. I disagreed. So here's me being controversial. What if you're being authentic? Let's say if you are a guy with a hot temper and you just want to say stuff and you want to do stuff or maybe you view the world in a certain way. And that's you being authentic.
So it's relative.
Is that the right approach in your social channel? If your audience doesn't like that or doesn't want that, do you continue to be your authentic self?
Got you. It makes a lot of sense.
So that's my challenge. So I would look at being authentic in a different way. It is about being strategic. Okay, let me say it again. Strategically authentic. That's the better word for me.
Okay.
Meaning that if I look at my target audience and I realize that this is what my target audience wants from me or needs from me, then what is the persona that I'm sharing with them that best connects with them? What is every person has got different dimensions of them. Based on who I am, what are the best dimensions that fits how I'm going to communicate to this audience? That's what you focus on. So I know I'm being controversial.
No, I'm thinking about what you're saying. I don't think it's controversial. I think it ties in with what you've mentioned about personal branding and how you are, whether you like it or not, linked to the brand that you work for.
Yeah.
So being strategically authentic, it makes sense through that lens because you need to, you can't always be yourself because that might not align with the brand.
Yeah. Now, let me give you an example, right? So yes, an example of this, because I was working with an organization. They sell alcohol. So the alcohol business. The person working for them is Muslim and can't drink alcohol. Now, so this person is in marketing, but they're a great marketer. What's the problem now? Can this person be authentic?
Interesting. Yeah, because it's dead set against their religious beliefs.
Exactly.
So then how do you divorce, because at some level we all want to be able to have our personal brand there's you as an individual that is not linked to your company.
Yeah.
How do you divorce the two?
Look, so for example, this person, right, in this particular scenario, I mean, I thought that it was a wrong fit, right? It was a wrong fit because you obviously don't like the product, right? But this person liked marketing. So back to your question, right? How do you divorce the two? Firstly, is there a need to divorce? Because if you are working for an organization, there needs to be an alignment, in my opinion.
So this comes back to the hiring process.
Yes, there needs to be an alignment. Because then when you have an alignment, if you believe in the company, if you believe in the products of the company, your personal brand, there is an alignment as a fit. Now you can be very different, but you could both want the same thing, and that's okay. If your personal brand does not resonate at all with the corporate brand, I think that's a wrong fit. I believe that's a wrong fit. And that's something you need to consider moving forward. And there's two options to it. Number one, quit. Number two, rebrand. Because just like branding, with a corporate brand, you can rebrand yourself.
When you say rebrand in relation to the corporate that you don't fit with?
So for example, right, I'll give you an example, which let's say someone is hot-tempered, is always angry, who's like very direct in the marketplace. That was an example of one of the persons that I coached. And I said, that's how people see you and perceive you. Let's change that. And so this person had to go through with me a rebranding exercise so that the perception of how someone's going to view him will evolve and change vis-a-vis the audience that he's looking at. So rebranding happens at corporate level, at product level. It could also happen at personal brand level. Now, at the same time, of course, we don't want a fake rebranding because that's your concern, isn't it? If it's not authentic. That's why I use the word strategically authentic, meaning that within this guy, for example, that I coached, he's hot-tempered and he's like direct, but there were things that he was really good at. He was creative. And as such, we focus on creativity.
Interesting.
So the rebranding approach helped him share his views on creativity and innovation and growth, and less on him being abrupt and direct. And we dropped that, but focused on his strengths. So that's him still being authentic, but now being strategically authentic to his audience. And he works in a tech business, by the way. So it fit very nicely with his persona that he wanted to put out to the world.
Love it. Okay. That's really
By the way, every single personal brand expert in the world is going to kill me when they say that. But I am ranked number 2 in the world for a reason, right? And I truly believe, right? I mean, the word authentic gets thrown around so much that when I challenge it, because if you really want to be authentic, then be your own boss.
Yeah.
Right? Be an entrepreneur. This is who you are. This is what you're going to get. And there are some people who do that. I mean, look at famous celebrities, right? This is who they are. This is what you're going to get. And that's okay, but it doesn't work for all of us.
So you're making me think of a personal branding that has imploded of late, and maybe you're not familiar, but I'm sure you've heard of him, Kanye West.
Oh boy.
So let's just loop to that, because that has been fascinating to watch, and he's unraveled a lot of his partnerships have unraveled because of his strong views, which
he's being authentic.
So just what is your thoughts around? Have you followed it? So,
I've not. I mean, in all honesty, I haven't. Okay. I've read some news about it, but here's an example. He's being authentic. I mean, there it is. To him, he says, I need to voice it out. I need to say, I need to speak. I need to tell the world what I feel about Jews. And all these things around the world. And he's saying it, right? So he's being authentic.
Perfect case scenario.
But what's happened?
Yeah.
What's happened is the audience that have bought his albums, listened to his music, the brilliance he has as a performer, have now said, listen, I don't want to deal with you, right? There's no connection. I don't relate to you anymore. So while that's a great example, by the way, of someone who's being authentic, but has put off his entire audience. Now, of course, you could argue and say that he's found a new audience. Other people who have such crazy thoughts.
Sure.
Right? But that's what I mean. That's why I'm very careful about the word authentic. And what he has done is that he's no longer relevant to his audience. The audience that have loved him and bought his music. I've bought his music, but I don't listen to him. And I'll tell you something. There are a few people I don't listen to. I'll give you a good example. R. Kelly, Michael Jackson. Now, R. Kelly and Michael Jackson were two brands that I listened to all their music. But after you hear all the stories about their personal brand and what they have done, that's it. I've removed them. I've removed them. I don't want to be part of that. I'll give you a third brand. One of my favorite personal brands for a very long time, Will Smith.
Yeah, sure. There's another personal branding debacle.
And he went up there and he slapped Chris Rock during the Oscars. And I never forget that moment because I saw a bully. Now, before that, I saw a hero. I saw the Fresh Prince from Bel-Air. I saw a guy who's successfully from growing up and really, reaching the heights of his career. He was my hero. And then he became a bully. And in that one moment, he lost me as a fan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. That's another one that when I experienced that, it changed my whole perception of Will. And I could say I was also a fan. I don't know if I'm not a fan, but it still stuck with me, that moment.
Yeah.
Such a strong pivotal moment. And then you look at Chris Rock, he's kind of on the other side of that spectrum. And, I think he's recovered well from it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't his bad, but the way so what I like about what Chris Rock did is that in that moment, now, I'm pretty sure part of his authentic self would be, let's retaliate. Let's maybe hit him back. Or
he was almost Zen-like.
Yeah, he was Zen.
Yeah.
And I mean, recently he did a show on Netflix where he talked about the incident, which I thought was brilliant, by the way. Brilliant the way he responded to it. It was just so brilliant. But he's got more fans now.
He's almost become relevant again because
Exactly.
he had disappeared off the stage.
Exactly. And that's the thing about personal branding, right? Everything is strategic. After that happened, he probably had an advisor that said, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do to build new audiences and respond accordingly. And by the way, even though Will Smith is someone I kind of step back now from, kudos to him, because there are a few things that he did right after this. He apologized. It took him some time to apologize, but he did apologize, and he's kept a really low profile.
Sure.
Right. And I think he's going to make a comeback, and maybe I'll find it in the future to embrace him again, because I really like Will Smith. Right. But it will take time for me as a fan. So here is the message we're all not Will Smith and we're not Kane West, but the lessons here. Lesson number 1 is, if you as an employee in an organization, remember, what is the perception that you want to leave with your audience? And how do you continue to strengthen that position? Number 1. Number 2, if you make a mistake, it will stick like glue. You could do 10 things that are great, but if you make one mistake, unfortunately, human nature is such, they remember that one mistake. A good example in Singapore is Joseph Schooling. Joseph Schooling is the guy that won the first ever gold medal for Singapore.
This is the swimmer?
The swimmer, right? Joseph Schooling. And I'm a huge fan. I still am a huge fan. But he made a mistake. He took drugs when he was in Thailand. Now, he took marijuana, which maybe from the US you go, it's a light drug.
Yeah, well, it's legal in a lot of countries, so
yes.
It's a bit of a...
But it's illegal in Singapore, and he was caught taking it in Thailand. And after that, you should see the backlash.
I remember when I first arrived in Singapore, it was in the papers, and it was front news after this.
It's front news because the guy that won the first gold medal ever for Singapore. Now, I'm still a huge fan because I believe what he's done to be the first ever gold medalist. But here's my point, right? He was the first ever gold medalist for Singapore in the entire history of our nation. First ever gold medalist. But that one mistake that he made is going to follow him for a long time to come.
But he can recover.
I hope so. He's doing a lot of good things now, right? He's come forward, he's apologized, he's kept a low profile, which I like. So I'm a huge fan. I still am a huge fan because I can see the humility and I can see the need to say, look, to prove himself, to say, look, listen, I'm really sorry. I've let you down. And so I believe he will. I believe he will. But here's again, going back to the point. If you make a mistake, if you do stuff on, for your personal brand, it's gonna stick to you. That's why I think it's so important that you get trained, you get coached when it comes to personal branding. Have someone else look at you. So you step away and someone else says, listen, this is what you need to do. When we go in and work with clients, we have a structured approach. Everything that we do is structured, from creating brand experiences to creating culture to creating personal brands. Everything that we do has a systematic, structured approach so that you can understand very clearly, here's the steps that I need to do to grow and to be successful.
Amazing. So, and maybe just to, you've written a few books that you've got out in the market that are doing phenomenally well. Maybe just to summarize for anyone that's listening, whether it's a startup or an enterprise customer, what is your approach to engaging with them, and what does that journey look like when they work with you?
Depending on which company, though, the consulting or the training and business. But with me, it's very simple. I mean, I have a very sincere desire to want to help. I mean, one of the things that you've seen me doing today is that I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do, and I love making a difference. So if you work with me, one of the few things that I do is I spend a lot of time understanding your needs, because every solution needs to be customized. Every need is different. Every company is different. Every brand is different. And my job is to go into your organization and to understand your needs and understand where you want to go, the vision that you're moving towards. And then it's my job to provide you with the right solution that will fit those needs. So a lot of it's customized and created for you. And then it's my job to execute what we have customized for you, to execute it, to implement it, and to make sure that we track and see the results on it. So that's how I would approach any project that I'm involved in.
And that's one-on-one, that's group sessions, a little bit more detail.
So depending, right? So if it's a consulting approach, the whole team is involved. But if it's a training approach, based on the intervention, it could be, here's a keynote I'm going to deliver to get you excited about this topic. Here are the training programs that we could deliver across all your markets so that everyone's on board. Here are the coaching sessions for specific roles, leadership, for example, so that they understand how to deliver and implement. And then there will be follow-up sessions that could be group-based. So it's a whole series of interventions. Everything is different. And every organization is different. So if it's L&D, it's keynote, workshops, coaching, boot camps. If it's consulting, it's a whole consulting approach that we take on.
Amazing. And I just want to quickly touch on you doing some phenomenal work. You doing some giving back. I think you and I have built quite a strong friendship very quickly, and I'm excited about working with you on the campaign that we've created, that is the Navigating Global Crisis campaign, and taking that to the market and working with the market to solve their challenges around that. But you also do a lot of giving back, and there's a campaign that you've got coming up where you're helping underprivileged women
and children.
Yeah. Can you just share a bit more around that?
So it's Together We Can Change the World. I know it's a beautiful, beautiful give back campaign that's been around for years. I was very lucky. I was part of the second tour when they first started. So it was founded by a mentor of mine, a buddy, Scott Friedman, who started this years ago, and I got involved. And it's a very simple premise. It's speakers giving back, which means we go in, we deliver programs and conferences, and audiences that attend, that pay a sum of money to attend and hear us speak. We take that money, we give it back to underprivileged women and children. So we use what we are good at and what we normally get paid for, and we take that and we give it to organizations that need this, or charities that need this all across the world. And Together We Can Change the World does this speaking tours in different countries. So we do this in Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines, so around the region. And I love being part of it, because not only do we go and speak and we raise all this money, we then go and visit these places. We go and visit homes. One of my big moments, this was years ago when I went on the second ever tour, was going to a home where it was deformed children. And so you go into the home and you see kids where they're born with deformities. An excuse, because it tears me up.
Yeah. I'll take a moment. It's fine. It is quite a difficult subject, and
it is.
I can imagine the things that you get exposed to, right?
Yeah.
Working through the region.
So you go in and you see these kids, and they are the most loving, precious kids in the world. And when I first looked at them, and I see deformed kids, but they don't see deformity. It's the way, it's their life. It's like, this is who they are. And it taught me a huge lesson, right? Going in and seeing these beautiful, beautiful children hug you, and laugh with you and play with you. And it changed my life. It truly did. And the difference that we make doing this program, helping raise funds for all this underprivileged kids. I think while we raise funds, I think the bigger lesson is us as human beings. We are put on this earth, I truly believe, to make a difference. Making money, yes, it's great, but I'm 50 years old now, and in a few years' time, who knows, right? I want to be able to leave this world knowing that I've done good, that I've changed the world, that I made a difference. And if you can, please support this initiative, right? It doesn't have to be this, and find ways to give back. find ways to do good, because there are people in this world that need this. So please make a difference.
No, that's very inspiring, and thank you for sharing. I think, it definitely resonates with me. I'm a humanistic, centered individual, and I think we can all, in our own way, make a difference. And this is you taking your skill sets and making a difference. So kudos to you on that. You also do training with when I spoke to Scott, do you do training with the women and children as well and share some knowledge with them?
It depends, right? So because we do tours every year, right? So there's a tour every year. And it depends on the location that we go. So there are certain markets that we go in. So it's underprivileged children, but they're also underprivileged women. And if it's sometimes you get women in the homes that we are, who are looking at specific skills. So based on our skill set, we go in and we help these women through programs and through learning and development. And there are different types of speakers that are part of the tour with different skill sets.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, to some of the markets, I know they've done a lot of wonderful things. I mean, for example, we have built wells. We have built a library. We've built schools. So all the money that we've raised have gone into really helping these homes and these communities thrive and grow.
Amazing. Yeah. So companies can get involved by sponsoring to have the speakers come.
Exactly.
And give a talk. And is the talk against the company's need, or is it a general talk?
So typically it's a general talk. We want to make this as efficient for the speaker's time as possible, right? So we're coming in. So a speaker could charge $10,000, but that money could go in will go towards that charity. But what we typically would do is to do like a conference. So a whole bunch of us would come in, and we have a whole bunch of people coming in, and what you would pay us would now go towards that charity.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's kind of the model. There is a few more mechanics to it, which I'm not, because I'm not part of the board of directors. My role is to come in and speak and make a difference. And there is the administration that handles all that. But it's a great cause, and I'm privileged to be part of it.
No, amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think it's been a good session, and I really am excited about the journey we've got ahead with the campaign that we're running. And tomorrow we've got our first launch event.
I can't wait! Rock and roll!
Yes, I'm also very excited. And
VUCA,
nervous.
We are coming for you.
VUCA, helping everyone understand how to navigate global crisis. I think coming up with the campaign. A lot of the thinking I must attribute to you helping to understand how to get some core speakers around a central theme. And I think going into businesses, not just having speakers coming into businesses for the sake of speaking, but to go in and make real change. I think to help shape businesses' futures based on the leadership and their understanding on how to deal with VUCA, based on the frontline staff, empowering them not only with thought leadership, but with technology and ongoing consulting and enablement. That's quite exciting. And
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, Jerome, thank you so much.
Most welcome.
I've really enjoyed the session, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.